Keep the facts is what you do. Know what you want before you go into an argument. That way, when you've accomplished, you reach your goal, you can know when to be quiet. You can know when to stop talking. You can know when to stop pushing an issue. But many a times we sort of do what I call hip pocket fighting. It's anything trivial. We just start talking about it and we have those deep, meaningful conversations, a lot of times in the most inappropriate places, not the most healthiest times of the day do we do that. And then those are just triggers. That's what they become.
Welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I really hope this episode helps you learn and master the skills you need to grow your leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as I post a new session so you don't miss a single episode. I'd also greatly appreciate any reviews, likes, and shares that you can give me. It just helps me extend my reach to more people. So leaders, I know just how frustrating it can feel when you're in the weeds of work or ministry and life is chaotic, you're struggling to feel effective, and you're just not enjoying leadership as much as you could be. And so to help you, after many years of leadership and executive coaching, I've developed a framework called the Christian Leader Blueprint that'll guide you to find clarity in your life and leadership. It'll help you gain a better rhythm of life. It'll help you see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and you'll produce more productive relationships. It's a step-by-step guide to leadership transformation. And I have that in two formats now. I have a free short guide that you can find on ryanfranklin.org, and I have a book, The Christian Leader Blueprint. And you can find that in any format, including an audiobook, wherever you buy your books. I have a few more things on my website that you may be interested in, so just head on over to ryanfranklin.org and check it all out. And now, let's get to our session. Welcome back to the Christian Leader Made Simple show. Today, we're diving into a topic that hits every relationship at some point, the subject of conflict. But what if conflict didn't have to be destructive? What if we could actually learn how to fight fair? My guest today has spent decades helping couples, families, and individuals navigate through tough conversations with grace and wisdom and with biblical grounding. And whether you're a pastor, a leader, or just trying to love well in your own relationships, this conversation is for you. Our guest today is Dr. Carl Wilson. Dr. Wilson is the CEO of Covenant Behavioral Health and Covenant Educational Center. He holds a doctorate in behavioral health and is a licensed professional clinical counselor, specializing in military trauma, PTSD, substance abuse, and a ton more. Dr. Wilson is a sought-after presenter on wellness, anger management, and relationships, sharing his expertise with organizations like Disney and J.P. Morgan Chase. He is also an ordained minister in the United Pentecostal Church and serves as the family pastor at his local church. Dr. Wilson has a ton of knowledge and practical resources for improving interpersonal dynamics. So, Dr. Wilson, I am very excited to dig into this with you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking your valuable time to unpack this tremendous subject. So, you taught a lesson that I heard on YouTube. A friend of mine actually sent it to me and said, "Hey, you got to listen to this by Dr. Wilson." And I said, "Okay, I'll listen to it." And I listened to it. It was called "Fighting Fair in Love and Relationships," and I was blown away at how practical, but yet how solid the concepts were. In fact, I made a note of it. I kept the link to the YouTube, and in my premarital sessions with premarital couples in our church, I'll definitely be sending that out in the future for them to listen to it. It's that good.
Good. Yeah.
So I know that this applies to marriages, obviously, but it's also just great for general leadership. And so I asked you to come on today to unpack these 10 things, and we're going to have to obviously kind of move sort of quick to get all 10 in. But would you be okay with trying to get them all in?
Let's do it. Let's try to get them in.
All right. So before we get into these 10 steps and we sort of speed this up a little bit, I want us to kind of slow down a little bit. And I'd love for you to tell why you're so passionate about this topic. Do you have any pain points in your own life that's related to this that has made you passionate about it?
Well, I certainly believe that for most of us, I'll even go as far as to say, none of us are born with a natural propensity for just doing things right.
Right.
It is often through trial and error that we learn, and that we grow. And so for me, a lot of the techniques that we'll talk about today are very close to me. These are growing pains for myself. I like to think that I'm doing them a lot better than I was, say, 30 years ago, when I first got married. And we really have tried to expand these as sort of our core for really helping people improve the quality of their relationship. And so my philosophy is that if you practice, if you learn these techniques here, that you can certainly improve the quality of your relationship, whether that's with family members, loved ones, friends, social settings, even in the workplace.
Yeah. So in your earlier years of marriage, you mentioned nobody has this right. How did that go with you?
So I am certainly what you would call naturally a dirty fighter. Most of us, my goal was always to win.
Yeah.
If I'm if I'm hurt, if I'm wounded, you hurt people. That's a pathology there, where if you've been wounded, then you want to wound the person as much as you are, or even worse than you are, is what you want to do. Yeah.
And you were in the military, so that probably adds to it. You're also, a natural leader, which adds to your competitive nature. Would you think that kind of adds to the complication of fighting fair and dirty fighting?
That definitely influences the way you handle situations, especially when you are someone who is, for example, say in sales. Your goal is to convince people to see things the way you see them.
Right.
Is to believe in what you are attempting to sell them. And so when you're in leadership, as a leader, the goal there is to really impact people, the way they think, the way they behave. And so, of course, the way that we typically do that is to get people to see things the way we do. But when we talk about fighting fair, though, we take a different stance there, because the goal is always to really have people feel heard and feel validated when you are attempting to communicate your feelings and your thoughts. It's not so much as to have them see things the way that you do. And so for me, that was a huge paradigm shift. And like I said, not born with the natural propensity to do this. I can tell you I've gotten good at this, and hopefully my wife and my children feel the same. Those are the true testaments right there. The ones who see you unguarded naturally in your habitat. So I'd like to believe that they would say I am a lot better today than I was 10, 20, 30 years ago when we talk about this. Yeah.
We recently had the privilege of being together and sharing a meal together in person in Louisiana when you came and did a district conference teaching. And my wife and your wife were there, and I got to witness this firsthand with you guys. I think at some point, something was brought up, and I could see you kind of sliding into those techniques that you use to actually, healthily work through those things, because this kind of stuff is just, it's a daily, I mean, leadership, but also our marriages, our kids, it's a daily grind. And we're going to have things that come up every single day in our lives. If we're actually living with people and interacting with people, things are going to come up regularly. And so, go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking, listening to you, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, there are often those people who say, oh, I've never had an argument with my spouse. I've never had a fight a day in my life. And I'm often saddened by that, because then that means that either you're lying to yourself, or you are so miserable.
Exactly. Somebody's domineering over the other if you have that case.
Yeah. Because we do this, we have arguments. And I know I even have heard pastors say, I don't like the word fight. Yeah. And I'm not talking about a physical fight, but we do. We often do, especially if you're in debate. I was in debate class in high school, so it's to win a debate. And so you fight with your words is what you do. So that's the kind of fighting that I'm talking about. And I don't think we need to be ashamed of that. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about that.
Exactly. Because that's, essentially what I'm hearing you say is that creates a healthy relationship, whether it be with your spouse, with your kids. I think about my kids. I don't want to just be a tyrant dad, where whatever I say, thus saith the word of Ryan. I want them to interact with me and give me their opinions and thoughts, and we're going to do it properly and healthily. But I want them to be able to interact with me and me with them, and to be able to fight fair, even with like my kids or people that I lead or whatnot. So.
And even the Bible tells us that, iron sharpens iron. And so we should be bringing out the very best in each other. And if we are to bring out the very best in each other, there is a flip side to that, or the other half of that. And that is that we can bring out the very worst in each other, especially when we are in close proximity, when we live together. Just listening to you now, the thought comes to my mind is to be open and honest and transparent before the Lord. And if we're going to be open and honest and transparent before God, then we have to be open and honest and transparent before the people that we love and we care about. And in taking that a step further, even the people that we work with, that we live life with, we have to be open and honest and transparent. And that's the reason why I don't think it's a good idea for us to sort of shy away from having arguments or having fights, because they help us to be open and honest and transparent. And if we're open and honest and transparent, then we can really build on becoming closer, because that's the whole goal. That's the reason why we fight, is to express ourselves and to be heard and validated by the person that we're talking with. It's just, that's showing somebody that you really care. That's showing somebody that you love them enough to listen to them, is what we're trying to do here.
That's love. That's relationship, for sure. So you've outlined 10 things that will help keep this healthy, fighting fair healthy. So we'll start with the first one. You in the video, you emphasize the importance of taking conflict private and keeping it private, which is a little bit opposite of what you just said, but I think we'll understand completely when you get into it. But you said especially around children, you want to keep it private from children most of the time. Why is this such a critical starting point? You just said that we need to get it out and open. But why is this such a critical starting point, and what's the long-term impact when we don't keep it private?
So when we talk about keeping it private, we are talking in terms of if you're going to fight, and most of us, we're going to fight, then it should be something that's done in private. It shouldn't be something that's done in front of family and friends. However, when we talk about children, I do want you to fight in front of children, but only if you can manage and regulate your emotions.
That's a good
because
point. Yeah.
We have to model that good behavior in front of children. When we talk about taking it private with children, that's where if you don't know how to do it, if you can't control your temper, if you're going to be ugly, mean, and nasty, you have to be careful with doing that in front of children because their brains are not developed to a point to where they can separate themselves from that fight between, say, mom and dad. Typically kids, just the way God designed them, the world is all about them. It revolves around them as it should, but when we don't have the self-control to manage our emotions and to keep from attacking a mean and nasty behavior, kids will often internalize that and make that about them. And so we can really damage a child's psychological development. And we know this through child development, the early stages of development, how important it is to model good behavior because they learn by watching us is how they learn. And so we want to teach them the right way to do it, not the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And so even in, say, an office setting, and I know we're kind of floating between marriage and family, and because it's all intertwined anyway. But even in an office setting, why is it important that let's say I have an alt with you, that I go to you in private and talk it through with you in private first? Why would that be a good starting point?
Number one, the Bible teaches us that if you have a problem, take it
Matthew 18.
Take it to that brother privately and try to resolve that issue. If that doesn't work, after a couple of times, then you're to bring that publicly. And so you really we're trying to model this from a biblical point of view also, and not just science, but a biblical point of view as to why you want to take those issues privately. I think the overarching goal when we talk about taking it privately is you want to make sure that when you do it in the public, that you're modeling good behavior, is that you're leading as a leader, you're showing people how healthy it is to have conflict and to not, not completely blow up a relationship, not to completely decimate a relationship because you do it the wrong way. But there's nothing wrong. We know that conflict actually gives us an opportunity to grow and have deeper, more meaningful relationships. So when you do it the right way, getting back to the whole modeling, when we model that good behavior, we really improve the morale of the people around us. So we're going to do it in public, again, getting back to doing it the right way. But when you don't have the self-control, when you can't do that the right way, you really need to take that private and keep it private.
Yeah. And as a leader, when we do that as well, it sort of models that not only in the home for our kids, but in the office for the people around us as well as the leaders. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So number two, you talk about saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Why do you think so many people struggle with being honest about how they really feel in a relationship?
First thing comes to my mind, I think it just all boils down to, I don't believe people are inherently evil or bad. All right. So no one wants to hurt your feelings. No one wants to make you feel bad, not intentionally. That is not the first thing that comes to a person's mind. And so in an effort to protect people from hurt feelings or things of that nature, we typically just will not tell them how we really truly feel about a situation. And so when we don't do that, however, there are severe consequences. We harbor, we internalize. There are physical consequences. There are psychological consequences when we are not keeping it real, when we're not saying what we mean and meaning what we say. And then we sort of leave that person who we're having a conflict with, we leave them sort of blind to the wounds and the offense that we're carrying because of that, so they think they're okay, because we won't tell them that, no, it's not okay.
And a lot of times that comes out sort of passive aggressively, doesn't it? Like we want to tell somebody something, And I find this a lot with the people that I coach. They're so compassionate, they're so loving that it's hard for them to tell people the real truth. And the reality of it is the passive aggressive behavior is one of the hardest dynamics to deal with. And when we do that, it creates a dynamic that is extremely challenging for people around you.
Mm-hmm. There are four forms of communication. So we know that there are types of communication. I'm sorry. There is the aggressive communicator. This is the person who sort of yells and screams and dominates and intimidates to get what they want. And then there is the passive aggressive communicator. This is the person who doesn't tell you exactly how they feel, but they will be mean in a nice way. So in other words, you will find them not really telling you how they feel or what they think about a situation, but they literally undermine you at every opportunity that they have. And then you have, of course, the passive communicator. This is the person who just keeps it all in, internalizes it, who struggles, who develops irritable bowel syndrome, who has stomach problems, digestive issues, all those physical consequences that come along with this also, and then the psychological consequences that come along with it. And then you have which is the assertive communication, which is the ultimate communication style. This is the one that everybody needs to be at. This is the one that Jesus actually modeled for us. Being able to keep it real, tell people how you feel, and not be disrespectful, not be mean, not hurt their feelings. Although I would say not try to hurt their feelings, although sometimes that's a natural consequence when you're being real and transparent with somebody, is that you will hurt their feelings. But I don't think that should be the goal, though. It just happens that way.
Yeah, so we have to keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing you said was keep it relevant. And you said this in the video that I watched. You said, if the fight is about mayo, keep it about mayo. not about his mama, your morning, or what happened 7 years ago.
Yes. Don't bring up grudges or sore points in a particular fight where they don't belong, because you'll find people, and I'm guilty. I'm so guilty. I can remember fighting about stuff and getting to the point where I'm like, so what were we fighting about? I forgot now because I brought up stuff from the past. And the dishes are dirty. And I asked you to complete this assignment last week and it still hasn't been done. It's like, before you know it, you're fighting about 10 different things. And what have you accomplished now? What have you really accomplished now? So that's the reason why you should keep it relevant, stay focused, put boundaries around the subject. Yes.
Why do we do that? Why do we drift into other areas? And what's a better way to deal with unresolved hurts?
Well, and I think you just touched on it. So typically when we bring up grudges and sore points in a fight, those are, number one, indicators that those things have not been resolved.
Yeah.
They're still very fresh. They still vibrate at the very surface, all right, of our feelings and our emotions. And so it's so easy for our minds when we're triggered to go sight, sound, smell, taste, or event will trigger in us and take us right back to that hurt, right back to that pain. And we're reliving that all over again is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so the way that we really manage that, though, is if that cannot be resolved between you and the person that you're fighting with. And let me tell you that if you're still fighting about stuff that happened 5, 10, 20 years ago, this is the indication that you can't fix this, that you can't resolve this alone. So go talk to somebody, get some help, get a third party objective person to step in and to help you bring resolution to that. If everybody was able to do this, number one, I wouldn't have a job. All right. If everybody was able to do this, then, we just would not have people like me out there helping you do it.
It's
right.
Hard.
It is hard. And so that's why we need somebody.
Not many people can do it alone. And there was a day where you couldn't do it alone. You had to have help. You had to have a third party to help you.
And I am so blessed by the experiences that I've had to help me. People think that I was just born this. No, tell people, no, I was not born this way. Trust me, there's a lot of sores, a lot of wounds, a lot of growing pains, and the education that I've had has helped me to grow and develop over the years, maturing, even to the point to where wanting to be a better version of myself has caused me to really work hard to identify areas where I need to improve and then to work on that. So it doesn't happen overnight. I even tell people when they try out these techniques, you're not going to become an expert overnight. Or after 5 weeks with me, you're not going to become an expert. But you take one or two of these techniques and you commit to mastering them is what you do. And then when you master one, you add another one or two to your list and you commit to mastering those. And that's how we really, really get a handle on this.
It's like the 1% ladder. We just want to go 1% every day. If we go 1%, we wake up a few weeks down the road and we've made some drastic headway. And communication and fighting fair is the same way.
Absolutely. Because we're talking about changing behavior, and behavior is not changed overnight. It is not. Mm-hmm.
No. Unless you have a doctorate degree, right? Your behavior changes overnight.
I wish that was the case. I wish that was the case.
So the fourth point is to avoid character assassination. And you mentioned how fast a conversation can go south when somebody feels like they're being attacked. All those weird defenses start coming up in us. Can you unpack what character assassination would look like and then how we can avoid it, even when those emotions are really high?
Yeah. So especially when I want you to consider that you don't have an argument or a fight with somebody who you don't have feelings for, who you don't care about. You would literally walk away, hang up the telephone, and never talk to them again. But when we care about a person, it's important to us. It is within us to explain ourselves, to be heard, to be validated. And so what happens is that, but when we feel like we have been offended, when we have been attacked, our brain, our rational part of our brain is hijacked, and we end up in the emotional part of our brain. And in the emotional part of our brain, that's where the natural fight, flight, or freeze kicks in. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't need your permission to do it. It takes a millisecond to go from here to here. And naturally, you feel as if you have to defend yourself against the person that you love and you care about. So now you have to defend yourself. And when you get back here, again, that's that animalistic, instinctive nature of you. That's where the Bible talks about we were born in shapen in iniquity, and in sin did our mothers conceive us. So that's where that old man rises up. And so the goal there is to protect yourself against that person. And so you go for the thing you know that's going to hurt them. Mm-hmm. That's when you start talking about people's parents and your mother, and you're just like your father, and that that is a wound, that is a stinger for your for your
the
spouse.
Defenses just go up,
and the gloves come off.
Exactly.
And in seconds now, this has deteriorated into a name calling, and sometimes even worse, to where it can turn into physical, and so that again is why it's so important to avoid character assassination.
So how do we avoid that, Dr. Wilson?
Well, I always tell people it's important to, once we acknowledge, and this is from whoever the partner is in this situation too, once you acknowledge that they've gone here to that emotional part of the brain, mm-hmm. don't continue the conversation.
The amygdala.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The amygdala. Don't continue that conversation. Take a break. Allow them to reset. You reset, calm down, and come back. The way that we stay in control and stay focused here, though, is I always tell people to write down what and write down what you want to talk about. Have something to sort of keep you on track, because it's so easy to get off track, and when you get off track, that's when you start pulling from all those other places is what you do. So if you want to stay focused, I think we talk about this in a little bit, that's that remain task oriented,
Well, and the idea of even you saying write it down, that the idea is to get you out of that part of the brain into the logical part, right? Because the logical is going to help you think a little bit more clear,
absolutely,
versus that fight or flight. So, but the emotions are high. Like we're in the middle of intense fighting, and I'm not just going to pause in the middle of that and go write something down. So what do I do in that moment?
Well, hopefully you've written that down before you get to that point.
Gotcha.
So we'll keep you out of that. But at that particular moment, the goal there is to have a safe, I tell people, have a safe word to say, you know what? Okay, we can no longer continue this conversation. And if the other person wants to continue that fight, they should do that by themselves. That's what they should do, and not with you. Remove the fuel from the fire, so to speak, is what you do. And you want to be careful even when you remove yourself from the fight, because a lot of people, especially men, are notorious for leaving and then not coming back to finish or to resolve that. And so it's important that you come back and resolve that issue, but you need to have a timeout. You need to be able to take a break when you see the eyes, sort of, they get really big and the pupils dilate. That it's time to take a break. Like, let's take a break before we say something that we both end up regretting.
So that's a great point. Really, when the emotions are that extreme, there's nothing you're going to do to help the situation. You have to pause and sort of retreat, take a break, let your emotion come down, and then come back together. And in that moment, sometimes you can't even say, because I've always taught the difference in detachment and healthily withdrawing is communicating that you're healthily withdrawing. Detaching is just not communicating and leaving. But even in that moment, it's hard to even communicate that. So sometimes you have to walk away, let yourself calm down for 15 minutes. But you have to make sure that you go back and you talk through the thing that it has created the high emotion.
And I tell people that when we get here, it's too late to try to be rational now. It's too late. It takes a millisecond, plain highway, if you would imagine, to here. From here to here, it could take hours, if not days, to come back from the emotional part of the brain back to the rational part of the brain. Hours, if not days, depending upon the person.
It depends on how emotional it truly is,
Yeah. So it's a little too late to you can't fix it in that moment. You really need to find a way, as you describe it, to in a healthy way, to sort of walk away, what I like to call reset, take some time, and then come back. And again, you don't want to sort of sweep it on the rug, because the only thing that's going to happen is that it's going to become a grudge or a sore point, and it's going to continually come up again and again and again. And so that's the reason why it's important for us to come back and address those issues. Yeah.
And so let's say that the emotions have calmed down, or we never really made it to that high of an emotion. It's more of a medium emotion. And your next point, number 5, is that you want to remain task-oriented. You encourage them, as you mentioned, writing things down, staying focused on the issue. Why does that help? How can we use that idea without it really feeling too clinical?
And so you want to ground yourself and stay in the moment is what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep you from the character assassination, really, by following this particular step. And so when you ground yourself in that moment and you stay mindful of the important things, keep the facts is what you do. Know what you want before you go into an argument. That way, when you reach your goal, you can know when to be quiet. You can know when to stop talking. You can know when to stop pushing an issue. But many a times we sort of do what I call hip pocket fighting. it's anything trivial. We just start talking about it, and we have those deep, meaningful conversations. A lot of times in the most inappropriate places, not the most healthiest times of the day do we do that. And then those are just triggers. That's what they become.
So before we continue on with the podcast, this episode is brought to you by Christian Leader Community Coaching. Are you a Christian leader who is overwhelmed by the complexity of trying to figure out how to grow your team? I want to introduce to you our Christian Leader Community Coaching program. We have an easy-to-use online platform that has a full archive of courses, supportive community, live group coaching, and elements that are customizable specifically for your team. And I've personally seen the quick and enormous impact that it can have on a team of leaders who are focused together on learning and mastering the skills needed to grow their leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. And we want to be a part of that with you. We want to help you create and implement a plan. The community is very much affordable, but I would say that you can't afford not to have focused growth within your team. Your results heavily depend on it. So don't wait any longer. Let's do this together. Go to ryanfranklin.org and join Christian Leader Community Coaching today. I look forward to seeing you and your team inside the community. And now, back to our podcast.
Triggers for us. And so when we ground ourselves and stay present in that moment, I tell people, I even train this when I'm in workshops, hold something in your hand that you're drinking from, and when you're talking, just try to stay connected to that cup, or maybe take your hands and place it on your heart when you're talking, so that you can become mindful when your heart starts beating fast, your chest, as you take in more oxygen, because you're starting to escalate, and become aware of your physical reactions to the conversation that you're having. If you can become mentally aware of the physical reactions that you're having, then you're grounding yourself. You're staying present in that moment. You're trying your best to remain task oriented and stick to whatever it is that you want to accomplish in that fight.
And you're pulling yourself out of the fight or flight part of your brain.
You're keeping yourself
into that logical part.
Yes. So we have what we call your rational mind, your emotional mind, and then your wise mind. Mm-hmm. And so the goal is to sort of stay right here. And this is what the Holy Spirit, the Bible tells us that, we can't be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can't be here 24 hours. The goal is to sort of match those together and just sort of live here in what we call the wise mind. Blend. Yes, absolutely.
We want the emotion,
and we do.
We don't want to take it away.
Yeah,
because that's what relationship is. That's where love is. That's where care is. We want to keep that in the picture. Yes. We don't want to be all logical, but we don't want to be all emotional either. So I love that analogy.
Yeah. And when you are grounding yourself and staying task-oriented, you keep yourself there in the wise mind is what you do. Yeah.
That's good. I love that. Sixth thing you say is allow retreat with dignity. You talk about letting your partner retreat with dignity and recognizing how they say, I'm sorry, which is an important thing. And why is that important? Why do we want to allow people to apologize in their own way and not force our version of closure on them?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the problems come. They didn't say I'm sorry. Well, how do you know they didn't say I'm sorry? Just because they don't say I'm sorry the way you say I'm sorry doesn't mean they're not sorry about it. So it's important to recognize how your partner says I'm sorry, or how even people that you work with apologize for their mistakes, or what contributions they had to a particular conflict. Because how an argument ends is very crucial, all right? It can be detrimental to the relationship is what it can be. And so we need to be able to recognize when that olive branch is being extended to us. Like sometimes it comes in the form of an apology. I'm sorry. I myself personally don't like that word. It has, in the Army, we're taught that I'm sorry has a zero maximum effect. It's what my first sergeant used to tell me. Like, don't say I'm sorry. It's the worst thing you could do is just say I'm sorry, show me that you're sorry. Put some wings on that, some action to that is what you do.
What would that look like, in your opinion? What would that look like to put wings on I'm sorry?
So for me, that's behavior change is what that is. That is doing something different than what you've done in the past. All right. That's how I know that you're truly sorry, that you, and not just sorry, but you are repentant. All right. That you are really serious about changing that offensive behavior or whatever that wound or that slight was. And so when you say, I'm sorry, you actually are doing something instead of just saying, I'm sorry.
It's a 180 turn in the other direction versus a 360. I'm sorry, but go right back to where
you were. Yes, sir. Yeah. Absolutely. So you got to find out, and the best way to do that is to really ask the other person. Especially when you talk about deep, meaningful relationships, it's important for you to know what your friend's apology language is. It's important for you to know what your significant other, your spouse, your children, the people that you do life with, to know what that is.
What makes that different why is that different for different people?
Well, I think when we talk about men and women, for example, genders, women typically, they have a whole lot of words. And so it's not a problem to articulate, I'm sorry. All right. For guys, we sort of just grunt. It's what we do. We don't have a whole lot of words. And so we're not going to fix up this beautiful apology, typically. And I say that typically because there are those exceptions to the norm. But, we will say, I'm sorry about, hey, I fixed, something on the honey-to-do list is what we'll do. Or I gassed up your car last night, or this morning or something like that. And that's how guys typically say, I'm sorry. And so it's important because we think and we process differently as men and women. It's important to know what those apology languages are because they are different, from person to person. Yeah.
Good deal. Number 7. You say give a face-saving way out. You said this is what you said in the video, let people retreat with dignity. Don't make them lose face just so you can feel like you've won.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So when we talk about fighting, I mentioned earlier, is this attempt to be validated. And when we talk about validation, I am aware that a lot of us have a misnomer about what validation is. Validation is not agreeing that the person is right or that the person is wrong.
Right.
Validation is just hearing them out. It's attempting to understand. It's putting in the work of empathy so you can try to understand where they come from. And so if I'm validating you, if I'm allowing this face-saving, opportunity to walk away, to get out of this disagreement, I'm going to add empathy is what I'm going to do by just validating and letting you know that I hear you. And it doesn't mean that I have to agree or disagree, but that's how we literally decrease the stress and the anxiety that comes along with a conflict or an argument, is by validating the person, letting them know that we hear them, allowing them to be able to retreat with dignity from that conversation.
Would that be the same thing as active listening or attunement as well? That sort of thing?
Absolutely. I operate from what I call the OARS. So OARS, using those open-ended statements, affirming that person. Those open-ended statements or questions are to gather more information, just to try to listen and to hear, and then you affirm them and say, so it sounds like I'm hearing you say, you repeat back to them what you think you're hearing them say. You're affirming, that you appreciate them talking about this and expressing their concerns. And then so OARS, O-A-R, and then the R is for just sort of restating back again, what you've heard from the conversation, all right? And then the S is summarizing what the plan is for moving forward. And so this is that active listening where you let a person know, because a lot of times there's this disconnect from what is being said and what is being heard. And so when you practice that active listening technique, you give people a chance to actually hear what you thought you heard them say. And then give them a chance to say, yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong. And so using the ORs, the open-ended questions, the affirmation, the reflection, and then the summary, it allows us to make sure that we have a clear, concise, mutual understanding of the information that's being exchanged back and forth.
Yeah. And we're going to come back to that conversation. That's point 9 as well. But I know that they're closely tied into there. But if we're actually letting somebody retreat and not lose face using that method, how does that look in a little more detail, if you don't mind?
So allow a person to say, I'm sorry. Allow them to leave with dignity from a conversation, however they say that I'm sorry. It may not always be the way that you want it to be. That's why it's important to learn what their apology language is. That doesn't mean that you've forgotten it. It doesn't mean that it's over with because they apologize for it. But it's something that truly bothers you. And the test to that is I tell people to journal, write it down, sleep on it. If you wake up in the morning and it's still an issue that resonates with you, then you need to have a deep, meaningful conversation about that. Is what you need to do. All right. You need to flesh that out and to really explain what the problem is to that person, because, 9 times out of 10, I don't believe people are inherently evil or bad. They don't know how important that is for you. So if you could explain that to them, I'm confident that you can get some wings, some wheels on that toward change when you explain to them how hurt you are, how disappointed you are about a particular situation or an issue that has happened. And so that's how we allow them to allow it to be over with right then and there. Then find out just how important it is to you by sleeping on it, waking up the next day and seeing if it still resonates with you. And if it does, then that's where you add more structure to that conversation, not just, any time of the day, anywhere you're having that conversation, but you literally add boundaries around that conversation to address that issue.
What I love about that is I'm hearing that you're not like seeking a full resolution of the whatever in the moment. You're actually seeking growth. You're in it for the long-term growth and relationship building versus just trying to figure out, okay, who's going to win this one?
Because when we have these fights, it's not about a competition. All right.
Yeah.
It's a partnership. I mean, especially when you talk about your staff, your team at work. It's not about winning or losing. At least I'm going to say, unless, you're part of the NBA league or, or something like that, then it is literally winning and losing, for the other team. But when we're on the same team, though, for example, we talk about a husband and a wife. If my wife loses a fight, I'm the biggest loser of all. I am. My children have lost. All right. If my wife wins a fight, I'm a winner. My children are a winner. So it's a partnership. It's not a competition. And so when you approach it from that standpoint, it really lends more grace, more empathy, an attempt to really understand and to try to build, toward cohesiveness is what it does. When you approach an argument, especially with somebody that you care about, and I'm talking about it can be in a work situation or in an intimate relationship situation. When you approach it from that standpoint, you understand that there doesn't have to be a winner or a loser, because when it does, that makes it a competition. And this is not about a competition. This is about growing together. This is about moving forward toward a single goal. That's what it's about.
So true. Yeah, that's so true. Number 8, you said set a time limit on fighting. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I think you talked a little bit about that. Everything's not going to be resolved in one night. Rome wasn't built in one day. So most problems that we have cannot be resolved in one conversation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you want to set a time limit to fighting. I always tell people, especially when you don't know how to fight or when you're poor at fighting, don't fight for more than an hour. Just don't. It's not worth it. You're not going to get any traction on that.
Yeah.
And so keep it to about 60 minutes. And if you're really terrible at it, then keep it to about 30 minutes until you learn how to do it better.
So when you hit that time limit, what do you just take a pause and come back to it later, or how does that work?
So when we talk about that setting a time limit, here's what we know scientifically, is that we should not fight after 8:00 at night. We should not fight when the sun goes down. And the reason why is because the circadian rhythm, our biological clock, when the sunlight in the morning hits our eyes, it tells us our brain is on all cylinders, operating, ready to go and accomplish the world. When the sun goes down and we're not getting that sunlight, it tells us that we are to go into reserve, recuperation, restoration mode. We should be going to sleep. And so we know that if we add more structure to the fight time and limit that we do it, the time of the day and how long we do it, we're more successful with healthier outcomes when we do it that way. All right. And even the Bible tells you, don't let,
Well, I was about to bring that up. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Most people think, well, we're going to fight until midnight if we have to get this before we go to bed. and I've always thought, no, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, let's stop. We need to sleep on this. Let's wake up the next day or when it's convenient the next day, and we'll come back together and discuss this some more. It's not healthy for somebody to fight for hours into the night because they don't want to go to bed without a resolved issue. It's okay not to resolve it completely.
That's right. Because if you think about it, that issue wasn't created in an hour.
Exactly.
That issue, it took you a long time to get to that point. It's a festering
issue.
Yes, it is. And so when we talk about resolving that and fixing it, it's going to take just as much time to resolve that, to bring healing and restoration to that problem.
And so, many times outside help as well.
Especially when we don't have the tools to do it, because if we could do it, guess what we would have did a long time ago? We would have fixed it a long time ago if we could do it.
Would have had it done.
Yeah, exactly. So here is a time where if you can't seem to resolve that issue, then you need to call in a third objective party to help you with that problem. And so that's the reason why we don't want to fight, carry it on for indefinite. It's okay if you have to have the same conversation about an issue multiple times. Here's what we know. Sometimes you have to say things in a different way multiple times in order for it to resonate, in order for the other person to have that aha moment. So you have to talk about it. You need to have several conversations about that.
Sometimes it takes us saying it multiple ways for us to have the aha moment to really flesh out what we mean by what we're saying.
By how we feel and what we think. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so we extend that same grace to the person that we are having the conflict with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Number 9, we've sort of covered a lot of this, but I want to bring out one point in this. Number 9 is listen to understand, not respond. You said something powerful in the video. You said if you're thinking about what to say next, you're not listening.
No.
Right?
No. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways to tell that you are listening in a conversation is to be present in that moment. It is to slow down your brain, especially if you have ADHD. To slow down that brain process. Your brain is operating, moving at 100 miles an hour. But one of the ways that we really listen is to slow that down so that we can be intentionally present in the conversation. And when we are intentionally present in the conversation, we are attempting to hear and to learn, like, why are we here? What's the problem? All right. But if you are formulating your response while the other person is talking, if you are coming up with your defense as to why you did this and why you did that, you are not listening in that moment. You are not intentionally present in the conversation. And so the goal here, when we talk about this one, is to really listen to learn, sometimes you'll help people. I've had spouses tell me, but I tried that, and am I supposed to just let them just, and I'll tell them, yes, you are. As long as they're not being physically, emotionally abusive to you, but if they're going, that's because they have a whole lot pent up that they've not talked about. They've not shared. So let them do that. Let them do that until you see them take that natural breath of, until they start blinking again. Because now you know that the cortisol, the stress hormone in their brain, is starting to recede to its normal levels. You know that now they're moving from here back to here. And you wait until they complete their train of thought. And you ask, okay, can I respond? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, no, I'm not finished yet. And that's okay too, because then they're going, and then you wait until you see that response to where their shoulders drop.
That's hard.
I know it is. But when you love and you care about them, when you love and you care about them, it shows them that you're there. It shows them that you're listening to them. It shows them that you're trying to understand where they're coming from. And I'm telling you right now, that's probably the biggest thing that you can do to reduce out of control, unhealthy fighting, is to show the person that you're trying to understand them. Doesn't mean that you are. It doesn't mean that you're going to walk away completely enlightened by what triggers them and what ticks them off. It doesn't mean that. But at least you're showing them that you're trying.
At its core, that's called containment. I mean, you're listening and containing what they say. And containment is, sometimes we underestimate the power of that relational nutrient, but it is a powerful relationship builder, because it essentially, when somebody is emotionally out of whack and they start spilling over and, basically vomiting words onto you, if you're able to just sit there and listen, a lot of times, that big helium balloon just kind of shrinks. Their emotion comes down, and like you said, they take that breath, and they're able to actually have a good conversation with you. Afterwards, and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard because that emotion within them makes them, that fight or flight makes them fight and say things that are offensive, and it brings up our defenses, and it's hard. But if we can learn to contain and just listen, as you mentioned, it is a powerful relational nutrient.
I tell people you have to know what you're fighting for.
Yeah.
It's not about who you're fighting with as much as it is what you're fighting for. And what I mean by that is when you focus on what the fight is about, because you think about this, you love and you care about this person, you have respect for this person, you consider them to be a friend, a colleague. And so your goal, again, is not to hurt them. It's not to be nasty, mean, and cruel to them. It's not the goal.
Yeah.
You care about them. It's their behavior. That's the problem. And so we attack the behavior, not the person. So when you have that toxic dump that you talked about, just sort of, it's got to come out somewhere. It does. It's got to come out. And so if you can learn to understand that the fight is not with them, the problem is not with them, I should say. The problem is with the behavior. Then you're able to separate those. You're able to separate those and say, okay, the behavior is what I'm having a problem with, but I love and I care about this person. If you can keep that to the forefront of your mind, then you can listen to them sort of, and this is where we say, it's sort of hard to say, don't take it personal when, your name is coming out of their mouth, like, every other word.
It takes a really mature person.
And it takes practice. It takes practice is what it takes. It takes practice. You have to work at this until you learn to master it is what you have to do. And so even when patients come in to see me, and they're upset with me or somebody in the office, I'll let them go is what I'll do. I have to keep in mind that, okay, you know what? This is not about me as much as it is about the behavior is what it is, something that has triggered them and caused them to spiral. And so I'll let them decompress is what I call it. And then I'll ask, okay, can I respond to that now? Even when I'm fighting with my wife and we get into one of those situations, it's okay. So can I respond to that? And after I have permission to respond to that, I'm not going to defend myself. That's not going to do a lot of good. All right. That's not going to do a lot of good. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to let her know that I understand where she's coming from. And I want to try to help the situation as much as possible. So you tell me what needs to happen. It's what you do. All right. And you use the word, a lot of maturity. It takes practice. It takes practice. Maturity. I'm not there yet either myself. So I'm going to say it takes practice is what it takes.
Yeah.
It takes practice.
It does take practice. So you're number 10 here, your last point, and then we're going to kind of bring it all together. But your number 10 says that be proportional in intensity, and you mentioned not every conflict has to be World War III. What does that mean?
Yeah. Not every fight that we have has to be an earth-shattering event. All right. Mm-hmm. Just because you have a right to be mad don't mean you have to be mad. The Bible tells us to be ye angry and sin not. So it's okay to be angry, but it ain't okay to yell, scream, throw stuff, break things, or put your hands on people. That is not okay. And I'll take it a step further. It's not okay to character assassinate either. It's not okay to do that. You have a right to be angry, but you don't have a right to be mean and nasty about it. So when we talk about being proportional in your intensity, there are some things you have a right to be angry about, but that doesn't mean you have to be angry about it. You have to pick and choose. As me and my wife today, we have a new thing. I don't know where it came from, but we will ask each other, is this the hill that you want to die on today? We're riding down the car. We get into a fight, an argument. And then one of us will look up and say, is this the hill you want to die on today? Is this where you want to plant your flag? And I know when I get that, I often go, no, this is not the hill I want to die on today.
Let it go.
This is not it. I'll live to fight another day. This is not it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So to just recap the 10 steps that you or principles that you initiated were, number 1, take it private and keep it private. Number 2, keep it real. Number 3, keep it relevant. Number 4, avoid character assassination. Number 5, remain task-oriented. Number 6, allow retreat with dignity. Number 7, give a face-saving way out. And number 8, set a time limit on fighting. Number 9 was listen to understand and not respond. And then number 10, be proportional in leadership. And so, Dr. Wilson, to kind of wrap this into leadership in particular, how can leaders in the church apply these same principles that absolutely apply to marriages of fighting fair from a general sense? How can they improve their leadership effectiveness and culture in their churches and businesses that they lead in?
So I will often tell people, especially when couples come in and it's just the husband or just the wife, I'll tell them, listen to me. We don't have your spouse here. I only have you. So you get to model the behavior that you want to see in the people around you. I tell them if they learn these techniques, they learn these skills, they are for use not only with their significant other, but with their children, with their neighbors, with their coworkers, with their boss. So these are skills that you can use in any aspect of your life. You focus on the issue. We talked about this, and not the person. Focus on the issue and not the person. People are not their behavior. People are not their behavior. There's something that brings them to that point in life where you see this ugliness, this unhealthy conversation. And so focus on the issue and not the person. We talked about, assertive communication, especially from leaders. You want to use I statements. When we point our fingers and say you this, you that, we send them from the rational part of their brain to the emotional part of their brain.
Yeah.
And so you talk about how you feel as a leader. You talk about what your expectations are, what you want to see differently. And you can do that, and you can keep the person here where they can actually listen to you.
They can't argue with how you feel.
You feel. That's right. But
if you start pointing fingers, you can bet they're going to argue about that.
Yeah. Because when you call them by name, when you point your fingers, they leave here, and now they're here, and they don't get a choice. It's a biological response. They have to defend themselves. It's the animalistic, instinctive nature of the brain, the amygdala.
That's good.
Overtakes. And so they don't have a choice. They're there now. And so the way that you keep them here in the rational part of the brain is to use those I statements. All right. Stay present and don't bring up the past. Stay present. Don't bring up the past. We talked about those listen to understand, not to win. So that active listening, those defensive rebuttals, repeat back what you think you heard them say for clarity often is what you do. Take breaks when needed. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to come back to the conversation. All right. To have a cool down period. If relationships were so easy, again, I wouldn't have a job. If they were so easy.
They're not easy.
They're not easy.
They're not easy.
And you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and taking those breaks, you respect boundaries. Mm-hmm. Respect boundaries. Don't yell. Don't slam doors. Don't walk away mid-sentence. And you need to try to agree to rules for communication when you're calm, not when you're in the heat of the moment. So if you have those rules already in place, that helps people go into it with informed decision-making that this is what I can expect. But when we just make that up as we go along, it's unfair. So respect boundaries. Don't yell. Don't slam doors. Don't walk away mid-sentence. Agree on ground rules before you have that conversation. Seek resolution and not victory.
And I would say for people out there that are thinking in their mind, well, I mean, we don't have rules. How are we going to agree on these rules before we fight? And what I say is take this podcast and you've got your 10 rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
Review this podcast with your team. It's going to help your team interactions, but it's also going to help your home interactions as well. Use this template, this 10 steps that Dr. Wilson has outlined for us here, which is a phenomenal list of things that can help us be able to fight fair and be able to have good, healthy conversations with people as we need to.
Yeah. I mentioned this before to you and I when we were in private conversation, but I promise people their money back. That's how confident I am that if you practice these skills, they will improve the quality of your relationship by at least 50%.
Yeah.
The quality of your relationship by 50%. At least you'll be able to have conversations about those things that you disagree on. At least you'll be able to have conversations now about, wants, needs, and desires, expectations not being met. If you use these skills, they will improve the quality of your relationship at least by 50%. And you can't go wrong with that.
No doubt.
Doesn't mean that you're going to be happy and you're never going to have an argument again, but at least now you have the tools to seek understanding, resolution, not victory. All right.
Absolutely. Well, as we bring this to a close and we wrap up here, just want to give you an opportunity if you have any closing remarks or anything that you want to say. You may have said it already, but
yeah. We've talked a lot about how to fight fair in love and relationships, and so this is something that we have sharpened and developed over the years in practice, and I'm very confident in the skills that we've talked about today. And if you want more information about us and what we do when it comes to helping people, they can visit our website. Covenantbehavioralhealth.org is our clinical-based website, but our leadership and faith-based is covenanteducationalcenter.org. Covenanteducationalcenter.org for more information.
And I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Wilson. I so greatly appreciate your time and investing in us today. You've been so tremendous with your words.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
So this concludes our show today. My name is Ryan Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.